Ready for takeoff. All right.
Have you ever looked out in the ocean and seen all the different kinds of boats and ships?
Look, a red one.
There are small boats that go fast, and there are sailboats that meander with the wind. Some boats come in different colors, like these tugboats, and others are just gray, like this Navy cruiser.
There's a submarine.
That's a destroyer tender. It supplies destroyers out at sea.
It's big.
But it's not the largest ship in the Navy.
What is the largest ship in the Navy? It's the big aircraft carrier.
This is the USS Nimitz. It weighs over 95,000 tons. That's more than 15,000 school buses. It has 4 engines that move it faster than 30 knots.
Knots?
Knots stand for nautical miles. They're longer than regular miles. A speed of 30 knots is about 35 miles per hour.
That's fast for a big ship.
On board, there's a crew of almost 6,000 men and women.
That's enough to make a city.
The carrier is like a floating city, complete with its own airport and more than 80 airplanes. In the water, it's taller than a 20-story building. It's longer than 3 football fields, and if it was tilted on end, it would be the 3rd tallest building in New York City. Let's go visit.
Okay.
Our adventure begins here at North Island Naval Air Station. The carrier is at sea, so we'll fly out to the ship in the C-2 Greyhound, or COD, which stands for Carrier Onboard Delivery. CODs deliver mail, supplies, and visitors out to the ship. A COD can hold up to 50 people and lots of cargo. Pilots check out the plane as the cargo is loaded. We're ready to go. The pilot unfolds the wings, and just a few minutes later, we're airborne, heading out over the blue Pacific Ocean. The COD only has 1 small passenger window, so it's kind of hard to see.
163 miles on, 3 miles on and slightly right.
What's that?
That's a wake left by a ship, part of the carrier task force. We're almost there.
Look, there it is.
The USS Nimitz.
From here it looks small.
Just wait. The pilot makes a final pass over the carrier. We've now been given permission to land. Hold on. The COD makes a long turn to slow down to get into position for landing on deck.
Here we go.
The plane has a tail hook that grabs an arresting cable. This slows us from 150 miles per hour to 0 in less than 3 seconds.
That's better than a roller coaster.
It's called an arrested landing. The pilot folds up the wings and taxis off the runway to make room for other planes.
Wow, look at all those planes.
The carrier has 7 different types of aircraft on board. There's the A-6 Intruder, which is a low-level bomber. The F-14 Tomcat, which is a 2-seat fighter that can fly twice the speed of sound. That's an S-3B Viking. It's a submarine hunter and a tanker for aerial refueling. There's an EA-6B Prowler, which carries 4 crew members. The newest aircraft on board is the F-18 Hornet, which is a single-seat fighter.
Look at that.
That's an E-2C Hawkeye. It's full of radar and electronics. It's the carrier's eyes and ears. And that's an SH-60 Seahawk helicopter. Like all carrier aircraft, they can fold into tight places. Watch this time-lapse view as a crew puts this Seahawk together. The flight deck of a carrier is a very busy place.
Look at those colors.
Everyone on the flight deck wears special colored shirts and helmets to indicate their jobs. The yellow shirts are the people who direct airplanes. The white shirts are safety inspectors. Brown shirts are plane captains and are in charge of maintenance for an individual plane. Blue shirts drive tractors and chain planes into position. Green shirts hook planes into the catapult for takeoff and handle the arresting cables. Purple shirts are called grapes. They refuel the planes. Red shirts handle all weapons and ammunition. And silver suits are the fire and rescue crews. A carrier flight deck is so loud that everyone uses hand signals to communicate. The command center of the carrier is the bridge, high up on the island, and the person in charge is Captain Harms.
The captain of an aircraft carrier is truly the person who is ultimately responsible for the safety and the mission of the ship. One of the wonderful things, though, about a carrier is that I have 6,000 people here to help me, and it makes some of those decisions much easier.
On the bridge, the lee helmsman operates the engines, and the helmsman steers the ship.
You should run it right 15 degrees. Just run it right 15 degrees out there.
When he turns the wheel, he controls giant hydraulic arms in the stern that move the ship's 2 large rudders.
How do they build a carrier?
A carrier begins here at the Newport News shipyard. It takes over 4 years to build an aircraft carrier. Engineers have to draw every part of the ship. It takes thousands of drawings and computer diagrams to design an aircraft carrier. Hundreds of workers are needed to put the ship together. It's built in a special area called a dry dock, where the ship sits on rails out of the water. A carrier is built in sections and put together like a giant model kit. Here's how the bow fits together. That's the island. After the hull of the ship is assembled, Then it's time to do all the interiors, with hundreds of miles of wires and pipes. When the ship is assembled, it's launched into the water and tested for many months before it's ready to join the fleet. The Nimitz is powered by 2 nuclear reactors that drive 4 large steam turbines. Reactors create steam that drives the turbines, which turn the propeller shafts. Since the Nimitz joined the fleet in 1975, she has never had to refuel.
Sweepers, man your brooms. Get the ship a clean sweep down forward, amidships and aft. Sweep down our lower decks, ladders, and passageways. Incinerator is open for burn. Take all trash incinerated.
No matter where you are on the ship, you can hear instructions from the bridge.
Right now I see some pretty good charts.
The average age on board the carrier is under 20. Many crew members come to the Navy right out of high school. Others have advanced college degrees, but they all have to learn new things.
We have some very complex and difficult jobs on the carrier, and the way that we safely get those jobs done is to train. We have to train.
Go, gentlemen, soak it out. That water's cold.
What are they doing?
All Navy flight crews have to take weeks of water survival training, so if their plane landed in the ocean, they would know how to survive.
What do they do?
They learn how to swim and float in the ocean and use their survival gear.
That means you bail out. Okay? So put your right hand over your left hand. Okay, you ready?
They also practice landing with a parachute in a special pool. And then there's the dunker.
The what?
It's a big tube built like a helicopter. Pilots sit in it, and then it's dropped into the water. They learn how to escape by holding their breath and climbing out through a small door or a window.
Is that hard?
The training is very difficult, and many don't make it. But you have to pass this training to become a carrier pilot. This is Lieutenant Bill McDonald, an F-14 Tomcat pilot. His unit is the Fighting Checkmates. Let's go with him on a real flight mission. Bill and his radar intercept officer, Lieutenant Commander Ken Angel, learn about the details of their mission. They check maps for emergency landing areas in case they can't return to the ship.
Rayman in 107 and Bags and Teen in 100.
After the briefing, they go to get dressed.
First thing we do is put on a G-suit. During high G maneuvers, a lot of G-force is put on our bodies.
The normal force of gravity is 1G, but when you make a fast turn in a fighter jet, the force can become more than 6 times that, or 6 Gs. The G-suit helps keep pilots' blood in their head so they won't faint during a fast maneuver.
We put on our leg restraints. Those are hooked in the ejection seat, so if you do have to eject, it pulls your legs in.
All fighter jets are equipped with ejection seats, so in case of an emergency, pilots can safely escape from the aircraft. Then Bill puts on his survival vest and life preserver.
It's got a radio in it, flares, knife, all sorts of things.
The crew then goes to maintenance control to review the repair records and make sure their jet is ready. Meanwhile, on the flight deck, hundreds of crew members walk its entire length to clean up any loose debris. It's called a FOD walkdown.
A what?
It means foreign object damage. If debris is sucked into a jet engine, it could cause damage and be dangerous. This is done before every flight operation. Just off the flight deck is the flight deck control officer. He and his team direct the movement and position of every plane on the flight deck and in the hangar below.
I need the HUD lowered, back out.
They use a model of the ship with little model airplanes to give every plane its place on the carrier. In the hangar bay, crews move aircraft into position for the giant elevators. Then they're brought up, 2 at a time, to the flight deck and prepared for takeoff. A Seahawk helicopter takes off. During flight operations, a helicopter is always in the air in case it's needed for search and rescue. The plane captain gives Bill a maintenance report on his F-14. He is the head mechanic in charge of that single plane.
Anything that needs to be serviced, he takes care of.
Bill then does his own walk around.
I'm just looking for general integrity, checking all the pressures of everything, make sure that nothing's loose, that everything's in place where it should be.
As Bill gets in his plane, the flight deck comes alive with activity.
Top to bottom, clear the canopy. I go through a pre-flight checklist before we get power on the jet.
The yellow shirts direct the F-14 into line to wait its turn for takeoff.
Okay, green deck. Green deck.
On the bridge, the captain gives the command, and the helmsman steers on course. The carrier speeds up to provide wind for takeoff. Now, flight operations begin. In a glass bubble on the side of the ship is the shooter, the person in charge of the catapult. He computes the aircraft's weight and the force it will need for takeoff. When he gets the go signal from the flight deck, he launches the plane.
Once the aircraft before me is shot off, they'll taxi us forward. I'll kneel the F-14. The wings will come out. The flaps will come down. Wings are 20 degrees. Both lights are out. Flaps are down. Spoilers off. Trim set. And they'll hook us into the catapult. The JBD will come back up behind the aircraft. They'll go ahead and give the signal for tension. When you see tension, we'll go to military power. Okay, coming up on full power. Got good hydraulics, good oil, good fuel flow. Temperature looks good.
218, got 4. 218 on 4.
I'm ready for takeoff. Stand by, here's the salute. Here we go.
520, clear forward. 528, clear.
It's about 2.2 seconds down the catapult stroke with a positive end speed of somewhere around 150 to 60 knots. You're moving.
In the Argonaut Squadron Room, pilot Janet Jacobson, called Jake, suits up for a fighter mission in the F-18 Hornet.
My father flew A-7s for the Navy, so I've been around airplanes all my life. When I was little, I just remember watching them go by thinking, God, that looks really fun. I want to do that.
Jake heads down 3 floors to the hangar deck to pre-flight the Hornet. To Jake, the F-18 is like a fine sports car.
Actually, it's about the easiest one to fly of all the planes I've flown because a computer controls all the flight controls. It's very dynamic and it's capable of many missions. That's the hard part, but it's amazingly fun.
Jake positions her F-18 for a catapult launch. She is focused and alert for danger, but she knows every flight is a great adventure.
It's about the hardest thing you can do with an airplane. It's pretty dangerous. We lose people doing this periodically. But don't let me get you wrong, it's about the funnest thing I've ever done.
Meanwhile, the carrier's helicopters fly patrols and practice rescue missions. If there was an accident, Navy divers could quickly be lowered into the water by a special cable hoist to rescue downed air crews. Other helicopters search for submarines with sonar buoys. Buoys are lowered into the sea and send back computer images of the ocean floor. If a submarine was there, the crew would see it displayed on the screen. The helicopter raises the buoy and continues, searching in other locations, lowering the buoy again and again. Carrier jets fly hundreds of miles on their missions. The Hawkeye is their communications center. It scans the area with its radar and sends back computer information to the Combat Defense Center on the carrier. Here, crew members assemble a picture of all the planes and ships over thousands of miles of ocean.
You know, at the brake, I'm slowing down, the wings are coming back out, flaps are down, the gear's down, the hook's down.
Landing on a carrier is perhaps the most difficult job a pilot will ever do. Navy pilots train hundreds of hours on a field airport, but there is nothing like your first landing on deck. Pilots say that from the air, a carrier looks like a postage stamp floating in the ocean.
When you're moving at 150 miles an hour and you have 200 feet to put your airplane down in, it gets pretty small from where I sit. The ship, as you're landing on it, is moving one direction, and because of the angled deck, the landing area is moving another direction. So you're constantly fighting lineup all the way down, and then you reach over there and put the hook down for the first time. And it's such a blur because you're so busy, you just don't have time to really think about what you're doing. It's about 90 seconds of concentration.
Your heart is in your throat. It's pounding at 100 miles an hour. Your eyes are about this big.
I remember coming to a stop in the wires and going, wow, this is it. I'm there. You hardly have time to think about being scared until like that night when you're in your rack going, wow, that's crazy. I can't believe I do that.
Well, it's one of the most exciting things that you do in your life.
This is carrier air traffic control. They tell the planes what altitude to fly and when to land. They watch the planes on a special radar and follow them as they come down along the 2 diagonal lines, all the way to the deck. Listen for the plane as it hits the deck overhead. carrier planes land at full throttle. So if they miss the wire, they can go around again. Life on a carrier is busy. The ship never sleeps, and crew members work 12-hour shifts around the clock. After a hard day, crew members can visit one of the ship's stores for everything from CD players to chewing gum.
There's a barber shop.
The Nimitz barbers keep the crew looking ship-shape. They perform over 6,000 haircuts every month. The ship's library is the largest one afloat, with over 6,000 books, as well as audio cassettes, videos, and CD-ROMs. If someone gets sick, there's a hospital with all the latest medical equipment. There is also a dental clinic and a post office. The carrier is so large, it even has its own zip code. So you won't get lost, there are maps and numbers at every passageway or frame, and each location is given a frame number. Frame numbers begin at the bow with 1 and progress to 256 at the stern. Passageways to the left of the center line are even numbers, and to the right of the center line, odd numbers. Many passageways have watertight hatches, which have to be kept closed for safety. Satellite phones allow crew members to call from anywhere. The ship also has its own TV station and publishes a daily newspaper. The ship is a self-contained city. It even makes its own fresh water from the sea, up to 400,000 gallons a day. On board, there are giant refrigerators that store hundreds of pounds of food.
What happens when they get low on supplies?
The carrier doesn't have to stop for supplies. The Navy brings supplies out to the carrier. It's called underway replenishment. A giant supply ship comes alongside, and the crew tensions a cable between the two ships. All types of supplies are taken on board the carrier, including food, jet fuel, and spare parts. Other supplies are transferred by helicopter. Underway replenishment lets the carrier stay out at sea for months at a time.
Looks like it's time for dinner.
The carrier's mess serve almost 18,000 meals every day.
Mess? What's a mess?
It's the carrier's kitchens and eating area. Cooks work quickly to get everything ready. Bread, rolls, and cakes are fresh baked every day. At the mess, there is plenty to eat. This is the enlisted mess. And this is the officer's wardroom mess. Meal times are scheduled throughout the day, but when dinner is first served, it can get very crowded. These people are all waiting in line to eat. After dinner, crew members play cards or watch television. The ship receives satellite movies as well as CNN and ESPN. Some crew members get ready for the next day, while others work out in one of the ship's gyms. It's a beautiful night in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. As the sun goes down, we can see whales spouting in the distance. At night, everything is more difficult and more dangerous. It's Sunday morning. Services from different denominations are held in this large area at the front of the ship, called the forecastle. You can see the giant anchor chains. Each link weighs over 300 pounds. Up on the 4-acre flight deck, crew members jog in the quiet morning. Flight crews especially have to stay in tip-top shape. Some just enjoy the morning, while others work on the planes. The hangar is packed full of more than 30 planes being prepared for today's flights.
That's a tight squeeze.
Training never stops. The carrier's Marine unit performs an early morning training and rescue mission. Every few months, the carrier comes back into dock. Tugboats guide the ship through the harbor and alert small boats to stay clear.
Watch out!
A helicopter flies overhead to make sure it's a clear course. When the carrier approaches the dock, this man takes over, the dockmaster. He's in charge of directing all the people and equipment on the dock. Crew members watch from the hangar bays as the tugs slowly move the carrier into its tight space. They have to back the ship into the dock.
It's like they're parking a giant car.
Families of the crew members wait nearby to see their loved ones. When the ship gets close, the crew shoots out small lines from rifles so the dock crew can pull out the giant mooring lines. When the ship is secured, telephone and electric connections are made. Now the unloading begins. Giant walkways are put up for the departing crew, and conveyors are set up for baggage and supplies. The air crew has already flown all the planes to the airbase, so the hangar and flight deck are empty. There is lots more work to do. Some crew members even have to take out the trash. Many crew members leave the ship so they can visit their friends and families. As a sign of respect, everyone turns toward the flag at the stern. If they're in uniform, they salute. In just a few days, the carrier will be loaded with new supplies and will head out to sea once more. The flight deck is quiet and empty as the carrier leaves San Diego and heads back out to sea. But not for long. Tomorrow the air wing will return and the action will start all over again.
101, let's get it close.